Hey folks, Simon here from Velo Performance. Now this week I'm going to talk about my philosophy of coaching and why I put Velo Performance together is because I see a lot of people training in a way that isn't helping their aging physiology. And the thing I've noticed when I started looking deep into the science of it, there are certain things that we need to be really focusing on to make sure we get the best out of our training, and also so we can ride our bikes longer, faster, ride up hills and stick with a bunch, or push hard going up hills and feel really confident in being able to do so. And I think a lot of older cyclists just think that they just need to train, and there are better ways to do that, and we need to think of other things too. This week I'm going to talk about how to train as an older cyclist and give you some tips and hints that you can put into your own training. So, as I like to say, let's get into it. Let's start with the bad news first. Sorry about this, but as we get older, so from the age of 30 onwards, our sex hormones start to decline, our recovery hormones start to decline, our muscle mass starts to decline, our ability to withstand lactate, so our lactate threshold starts to drop, our VO2 starts to drop, and the quality and function of our muscles starts to drop too. But here's the good news. Let's throw some really good news at you. If you eat in a certain way, if you train in a certain way, and if you think about your lifestyle in a certain way, you can really reverse that aging process, or at least you can hold it off. So it means that you can ride your bike for longer, you should be able to ride it harder up hills, you should be able to have way more fun on your bike. So what should we be doing in training? Well, look, when you look at the evidence, as we get older, we get weaker. We basically lose muscle mass. So we need to make sure that we're focusing on that to make sure that we stay strong, because that is your foundation of power, it's your foundation of strength, and it's the foundation of going quick up hills. First off, and a lot of people are not gonna like hearing this, is they need to get off the bike and hit the gym. When I speak to cyclists and they say they are actually strength training, when I talk to them about what they're doing in the gym, what they're generally doing is they're training like a bodybuilder, and what they're not trying to think about is building pure strength. So if I can create a wee picture for you, if you think about someone that's strong, we think about someone that can pick up something very heavy for one rep. And that's the whole basis of strength training, is that you're trying to lift heavy and lower reps. Now, when you first get started in the gym, you can't be doing that straight off, because that's how you injure yourself. So you need to plan it in a way that you build up from that. But basically, when you hit the gym, you want to be lifting heavy for fewer repetitions and more sets. The other thing I think we should be doing as cyclists is putting in hill reps on the bike. Now, a lot of people don't like doing these things because they seem too structured, and also they're really tough. But here's the thing, that structure is gonna make you fitter, it's gonna make you stronger, it's gonna help you be able to ride up hills faster, hold bigger power numbers, be able to ride longer for less effort. So they are really good sessions for cyclists to put in. Now I know what you're thinking, I've talked about 2 strength training sessions, so how do we put that into our training? Well look, let's talk about the gym sessions to start off with. I think you should be doing at least 2 gym training sessions a week. Now they shouldn't be too close together, so at least 3 days apart, so that way you can get decent recovery. When it comes to doing hill reps, well look, that really depends on what you're doing in the rest of your training. However, what I try and do is give my cyclists a focus, so we periodize their training. So if we're going through a strength block, we'll make sure that they do a progression of their strength training over a 3-week period. So generally what I give my athletes is a 2 to 3 week focus, where they build in the intensity and the progression of their training, and then they have a deload. And this actually brings up a really good subject. Recovery is absolutely critical for making sure that we get the best out of our cycling. So once you've done your tough training session, the next day should be pretty steady. That way you can absorb the training. And this is where a lot of cyclists fall down, because they push too hard in their easy sessions. So they're actually pushing a lot more fatigue into the body than they need to. While we're on the subject of muscle, the one thing I think we need to focus on as older cyclists is making sure we're eating enough protein. Now, this is something I talk about a lot with my cyclists and with the athletes that I coach. And it is really important, because as we get older, our muscles become more resistant to protein, which means we need to be better quality protein and we need to eat more of it. So how much should we be eating? Between 1.8 and 2 grams per kg of body weight spread across 4 meals a day. So that basically means breakfast, lunch and dinner, and then potentially a high protein small meal after you've trained. Let's talk about carbohydrates, because did you know a higher carbohydrate diet is actually quite muscle sparing, and it is something to consider, especially when there's a lot of diets out there which persuading people not to eat so much carbohydrate and trying to drive people towards a higher fat diet or a lot of fasting. And that's another thing I think we need to be aware of. I'm not saying fasting is a bad thing, but what I am saying is when you're training really hard and you're missing out meals, when you look at the bigger picture, as I've been talking about when it comes to protein and just making sure that you are fueling yourself, if you're missing a meal before a particularly tough session, you are losing out on the chance to recover well from that training session, because you literally just don't have enough food to be able to support the recovery process directly after that training. So it's something to consider that if you are in a particularly hard or voluminous training block, that maybe fasting is not the right approach to be doing if you're trying to get the best out of your training. Let's talk about recovery, because this is something I heard in the ISSN podcast all about training older cyclists. And what they were saying is that we recover at the same level as our younger counterparts. It just takes us 24 hours longer to do so. When you think about that, actually, it has huge ramifications about where we put our intensity and how we recover from it, because that's kind of critical. And I think this is something I see a lot of pro athletes and also enthusiastic cyclists get wrong. They just push too hard all the time, and what they need to do is back it off and allow their body to absorb the training that they're doing so they can recover at their most. And also it means that when they go into harder training sessions, they can give it their best. Now I know what you're thinking, I'm not an elite cyclist, I don't really need to know this. But the answer to that is yeah, you kind of do, because actually understanding how elite athletes train and how they get the best out of their performance means that when you come to figuring out what you're going to be doing with your training, and this is the whole point about Velo, is that when people come on board, I make sure that they're doing the right things in training so they get the best out of it. So they're not wasting their time in their training, and I'm holding them accountable, but I'm also making sure that they can go out and ride with their mates nice and steady and have fun, but also they're getting some really good rewarding training sessions that are helping them ride faster up hills, just be able to ride longer for less effort. It is something that once you understand the science of it and you put it into practice, you suddenly realize that you are fighting off your age. You're stronger than you ever thought you could be at the age of 40, 50, 60. And all of a sudden, the world is opening up to you again, because it means that you can do more. You don't have to accept that as you get older, you get slower. This is the whole point of Velo. This is what I'm trying to do. Is I'm trying to show people that this is 100% possible if you train and eat in the right way. Right, I'm going to wrap up there, because actually, do you know what? I'm going to finish off with this. When you look at your training, when you're trying to think about how to get better on a bike, there's only a few real things that you need to focus on. That is a couple of key or harder training sessions each week to make sure that you're working on a part of your physiology or part of your cycling skill, whether that's climbing a hill fast, whether it's holding bigger numbers. You need to make sure that you're focusing on those one or two things that are going to improve your cycling for what you're trying to achieve. You need to focus on recovery. You need to make sure you're eating in a way that is going to give you really good recovery. And also, you just need to be backing it off in your easier ride. Now, that doesn't sound very sexy, does it? But it is the right way to train. It's a couple of hard training sessions a week. That's it. That's all I do. Everything else off the back of that is pretty steady. Right, so look, I hope this all helps. If you like these videos and you think you're getting any good information from this, please look, hit like, hit subscribe, and please look, share this with your friends, because I am trying to get a good message out there for older cyclists on how to train better, how to eat better, and how to have more fun on their bike. Right, thanks for watching. I'll be back next week.